All right. So, Zach Conover, communications director with End Abortion Now. Obviously, I'm a part of Apologia Studios, appear on Apologia Radio, but we're joined today by Michael Foster out of Batavia, Ohio. I'm pretty sure that most people that listen to our content know who you are.
Cool.
Maybe take just a minute, though. I mean, I know you're an author, you're a pastor, but I mean, what if people don't know who you are? Could you fill that out a little bit for us?
Sure. I'm married with 8 kids. My wife, Emily, and I have 5 boys, 3 girls. And we live in Batavia, as you said, which is right outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. It's like about 35 minutes from downtown. Okay. Fairly rural. And planted a church there in 2020, East River Church. That's outside of my family. It's my first commitment. Yeah. But I write on a variety of issues. Men issues been something that I've spent a lot of time on the last several years, and wrote that book, It's Good to Be a Man.
Right.
Got to do a documentary with Canon Plus on that book. That was fun.
Yeah, I caught that too. Very good.
Yeah, I'm a pastor. I'm a dad. I try to help men wherever I can. That's who I am.
Right on. So the two main things that I think people seek you out for is your content on masculinity and also localism. You're very much about, county, poor country,
Amen.
Being an impact where you are, planting there, building, watering that. And really, I think the first time I heard about you wasn't through the book, but it was through the It's Good to Be a Man podcast that you had with Dominic Non-Tenant.
That's right.
So I first heard about you there, and I started listening to this content, and there was a lot of insightful things, and I'm sure that you've been sought by young men aplenty over the past several years. Yeah. So as they're reaching out to you, as you're accumulating, their attention, if you will, and listening to their struggles and going on about this, what inspired you guys to write the book, and what were you hoping would be the big takeaway for young men?
So I started It's Good to Be a Man, I think in 2018, somewhere around there. And it started as like a Facebook page, and I was going to do a podcast. And then Non was thinking through some of the same issues. Like, these young guys were listening to Jordan Peterson, pickup artists, like the Manosphere stuff, which is kind of
the red pill stuff,
kind of like over to some degree. It kind of died with Andrew Tate. I think Andrew Tate took it to crazy levels, and
nobody wanted any more him.
No. But that stuff was like, we were kind of cutting edge at the time interacting with it. We were interacting with it because it was affecting how young men thought. And we're like, why are they going to these pagans? Why are they going to pickup artists? What's this all about? And then as I started, back then I used to buy old comic book stores and flip. I'd go in, buy out all their content, and flip it online through Amazon and eBay and all this. So I had like hundreds of thousands of comics that I'd sit down in my warehouse, pack up my comics to send in, and listen to hours of this stuff, trying to wrap my mind around it. So as I listened to that, I was like, okay, it's practical. It's a little more honest about male and female nature, especially unregenerate male and female nature. Okay. And so that started to reframe It's Good to Be a Man from what would have been probably like a lot of the other content on sexuality at the time to something a little different.
Right.
And so I was like, I'm going to write a book. I was really blown away by Peter Jones' article on androgyny. I don't know when I first read that. It was a long time ago. Yeah. But I've been obsessed with androgyny ever since 1999 in my Anthropology 101 course, where I had a lesbian feminist professor who looked like a dude, who was very intriguing. And there's this part in our textbook, and it's this big old black bodybuilder. And they showed the picture of the bodybuilder to this African tribe. And the African tribe was like, that is a big woman, right? Because he's all like greased up and he's got pectoral muscles. And you're like, whoa, what's going on? And she talked about how industry back then, back in the 20s or whatever, maybe 30s, realized that they'd sold as much as they could to women. And they started rebranding purses to men and hair gel to men, and how there's this kind of been this push towards androgyny. Yeah. Of course, she saw this as probably good to some level. She was a pretty honest academic, so she got me turned on to like radical feminists. I read them all, like, Sheila My Firestone's my favorite because she's the most honest.
That must have been a dark period in your life.
Oh, I became patriarchal through reading feminists.
Okay.
Like I didn't come up through complementarian circles. I was been a believer about 2 years when I went to college.
Okay.
And as I listened to these women criticize birth, so abortion is a big part of it, right?
Right.
So they're like, Sheila My Firestone's very in a dialectic of sex. She's very straightforward on this stuff. She's like, and two women are freed from the household and from the womb, they can never truly be equal. So she's like all into ectogenesis. So like basically growing babies, she's dead now, growing babies inside of like a fake womb. So she was like all about, she believed that a woman's body was ultimately like chains, right? Shackles. It was the enemy. They had to be delivered from it.
She's held
or they'd
back
never
by
be delivered.
biology.
Yeah. So that's where I started having this idea about maleness and femaleness being good, reading like Dutch guys like Grace Restores Nature. That was happening at the same time.
Bob Inc.
Yeah. That's where I got really introduced to those guys. I started with Schaeffer, and you can kind of trace it back through Schaeffer.
Okay.
Then I also read The Puritan Family by Edmund Morgan, and he's an atheist, but a very honest scholar of the Puritans. And that's a great book. Highly recommend it. It's worth reading. First chapter talks about how the Puritans really looked at family life in the fall and all this through a grid of order disorder, right? And things breaking down. So I put together a talk that I did for this EV-free youth group that like totally scandalized everybody. And that
Did
is—
they ask you back or not?
No. Okay. But I will say the pastor defended me, even though he's like, well, don't do that to me again. But he definitely defended me. That's kind of the first chapter of It's Good to Be a Man. I wrote that years ago.
Okay.
So the idea of androgyny, the idea of the body being treated as it's not good, the idea of
ideas.
order and cosmos having structure and seeing the fall as the devil's attack on God's hierarchy, all that was like kind of early on and stewing in me. And then with the red pill stuff, I was like, I think we're onto something here. And I think we should write a book that is like a detailed theology of male sexuality with emphasis on androgyny. So we started this like really crazy project. And then I started talking to men through email, on phones, folks that were like reaching out to me because of the podcast. And I started to realize how they're like overthinking everything, how we don't need another sort of academic scholarly book. And that's not who I am really.
Yeah.
And I can carry my own somewhat, but I'm more of a practitioner.
Sure.
So we started to reframe the book and really focus on getting these guys unstuck, getting them heading the right way, giving them big principles as opposed to, I'm more of a principle guy than a rule guy. And that's what a lot of men want. Like, give me steps.
Give me the blueprint.
But that's not wisdom, right? Like wisdom is a wise application of knowledge across many different circumstances.
It's not a detailed step by step.
That's
like,
right.
Here, build this thing. Here's this manual.
So that all started to take form, and then I saw Non. We used to argue about the Sethite view.
Okay, yeah,
because I'm a huge proponent of the Sethite view, and not the demon baby view. So we used to argue about that all the time, and so it's men are we become friends through fighting. Girls, when they fight, they're never going to be friends again. Guys, you bloody a lip, and you might be best buds forever. So I read something on his blog. And he was like clearly listening to the same stuff. And I said, man, I don't want to do this by myself. Why don't you like join this Facebook group with me and we start working on this? So that turned into the podcast, and then that turned into the book. I always thought of It's Good to Be a Man as a project.
Yeah.
So something with a beginning and an end. And so once we got the book done, I ended the last episode 75. My brother had died, and he had overdosed and just ran himself into the ground. And I ended it with that because guys have grown up broken and fatherless, and they can get stuck in the past. So much bitterness. Yeah. They can not be able to see the future. And that's what happened to my brother. So I wanted to end with like, hey, with a warning. This could happen,
Yeah.
but there is hope. There is.
If you allow bitterness to consume you,
it can.
Or resentment.
And so take these things, like, I think of depression or brokenness like that my brother had as like a valley, right? So we've had 9 kids. So I had a girl. Sometimes I say 9, sometimes I don't. It confuses people. But I had a daughter, Nicaea, who died around her due date, stillbirth, right? Her heart just gave out. We don't know why. It was very painful. And when you go through something like that, traumatic, whatever you want to call it, you enter a valley. You go deep down into a valley. And sometimes you'll meet people that set up camp at the bottom of that valley, like in their pain, stewing in it. And those people say, "Oh yeah, let's talk about our pain. Let's talk about how like your dad did you wrong, or how terrible as a baby died." But what you have to do, they say Churchill said this, but he didn't. We don't know who. But when you're going through hell, keep going, right? You have to push through, and you squint your eyes. It's that little light that's coming over the top of the mountain, of the valley,
on the horizon,
and then you push through that. And that's what I've been trying to do, because we have several decades of generational problems in America. Really, you got the 50s with guys like Kinsey Institute that led to sexual depravity. That stuff really takes root in the 60s. 60s, things move really quick.
Mm-hmm.
You go, that's where you start moving towards abortion, no fault divorce, what do you call it, birth control pill.
Right. The declension is rapid from that point.
20 years from there, you get to the 90s. So kids like me in the 80s, boys, we were like being drugged with methylphenidate, which is Ritalin.
Okay.
The school place had turned, shop is disappearing, recess is getting shorter.
Mm-hmm.
They're building classrooms around more feminine behavior, which is good behavior. There's nothing wrong, it's natural. Mm-hmm. But boys aren't girls, girls aren't boys. They're a little different. You have to build, if you're going to have these education sort of approaches and tactics, they have to figure in both sexes or make a school just for girls and a school just for boys. Right. So from the 80s on, man, I mean, when I was a kid, it was still very rare to have many divorced parents in like your 2nd, 3rd grade class. Yeah. Now it's like 50% of America. They don't know their dad. Dad's not around.
Right.
So It's Good to Be a Man was written for what we call bastards, which people think is a cuss word. We did make a mistake in the book. So we wrote one version of the book, and then we like radically edited it because Canon told us it needed more editing, and we did, but we like totally changed it. We moved one chapter from the beginning or from the end to the beginning, and we forgot to explain clueless bastards there. So if you're ever reading that book and out of nowhere we say clueless bastards, that was supposed to be after we had explained it. We're not just throwing around cuss words.
Yeah, we weren't going for shock value.
No, not at all. It was so hilarious that people said that. But a bastard is just an illegitimate child that doesn't bear the name of his father.
Yeah.
A name is like with the name of God is all his attributes, everything. A name is like your brand, your reputation, who you are. So a bastard doesn't carry his father's name. He doesn't get all of his father given to him. And that's a pain. And when people are like, well, are you insulting them by calling them bastards? They feel like it. Mm-hmm. It actually isn't an insult for a lot of guys. It is naming a pain, a specter, a cloud that hangs over top of them. Mm. And I don't have my dad the way I wanted to.
Right.
So we wanted to write a book that's practical, that engages some of these big issues and helps other clueless bastards, men that weren't taught how to tie a tie, how to shake hands, how to look a woman in the eye, and how to talk to them. Yeah, how to talk to them, and guys that can get it done. I always think about Red Green, the comedian. Like if they don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy, right? Like men are measured by our ability to get things done. We wanted something that got them unstuck and got them moving, and I think we accomplish it for the most part. Mm-hmm. Every time you write a book, you go back and say, yeah, I'd do that differently or whatever. Yeah. And our goal was to create something timely, not timeless. We don't think I don't think I'm the next Calvin or anything like that. I hear people say that. I'm like, good luck, buddy. I can write something that can help these guys. So that's kind of the genesis of the project. It was a good project. It's been a blessing to help a lot of guys. Yeah. A lot of hurting men out there, a lot of opportunities. I think men don't need much, right? Like you praise a guy. It's like I was a wrestler, big time wrestler, and both my boys, two of my boys are wrestlers. And, your coaches don't actually praise you that much. Like, you're screwing this up and go run suicides and don't slam down your headgear and do all that. And I remember this one time, my first year wrestling, I got moved up to varsity and I wrestled the state champion or the second. I think he came in second in state. Right, he didn't pin me in the first period. He did pin me in the second, but I gave him a run for his money in the first period.
Yeah, the underdog.
And I was just like going crazy. And I came off, and Donnie Stonefield was his name, was my coach that year. And Donnie said, "Foster, you can wrestle for me whenever you want." It just meant the world to me.
Yeah,
like I had just lost, and he said he was blown away by the effort and encouraged by it. A lot of guys just need someone to say, "I love you," or "You're doing a good job. Yes, you screwed up, but you can do that." That's what men need. They need kick in the butt, but also praise.
Not just be a man.
Yeah.
But
not like man up is not helpful to someone that doesn't know what it means to be a man.
Exactly.
Right? Man up. Like, how do I man up?
Okay,
right?
What does that look like?
Yeah, and so I think the boomer pastors mean well, but they grew up before a tsunami washed away a lot of cultural memory.
Right.
There's like, I remember I shook this guy's hand, Gary Noppert. He was my youth pastor's husband. I had a woman youth pastor when I first got saved. So I ran into him at Kroger, where I was working as a guy that like bagged and got the carts. And I shook his hand. I did the like dead fish, you know?
Yeah.
And Gary's like, son, that's not how you shake a hand. Never do that again. Here's how you shake it. I was like, I never shook a hand that way ever again. You know, I remember squeezing an old woman's hand too hard and like, no, don't do that either.
Right.
But there was fathers, there was uncles, there was a cultural knowledge that slipped away more and more and more. There's a way that boomers grew up that was good. Yeah. And put them ahead. And some of these guys just have gone on with their life. They have their own responsibilities or whatever. They're maturing too. Yeah, I'm 44. I still feel 16. I'm sure boomers that are 60 still feel 20. They don't know that the world changed. Some of them don't. Yeah. But it has. It has changed. And some of these guys need really simple, practical advice. Right? They just need like a few things. And if you're telling them to man up, that made sense in a world that knew what it meant to be a man. In a world where a dude can be a chick because he feels that way, or a chick can be a dude, or, you know, that's the world we live in.
That's something you point out too, is the change hasn't been necessarily overt or all at once. No. It's been a subtle degradation.
Yes. It's like a tsunami. That's the picture I like. I got really obsessed with the Boxing Day tsunami. Okay. Like in the early days of YouTube and break.com, because it's the first time we like had lots of handheld video cameras and ability to upload it to the internet. So there's more videos of that tsunami than there's ever been of any other tsunami, really. And but it comes in and it knocks everything over, destroys stuff, and then it goes back out. And when it goes back out, it rips away large volumes of soil and dirt and all that.
So it pulls with it.
It does. Back, yeah. And then it comes back in, and it goes back out, and it comes back in, and it goes back out till things finally settle. So you got different waves of feminism. You've got the state taking playing the role of dad. Yes. You've got the welfare state, more or less. You've got methylphenidate, the feminization of all education. Right. You've got the death of the mainline church and the rise of churches that don't have like a lot of authority or structure in them. You get all these waves. Society got radically redrawn in the last 100 years, especially last 50, even more so. And we live in a world that's pretty chaotic. Yeah. And I'm really hopeful right now, you know, with this election. I don't think Trump's the savior or anything like that, but it's nice. Like, I don't have to worry about getting canceled online. True. Because of guys like Elon, you know, I don't know how long he's for us.
Exactly. Yeah.
But while he is, it's a chance for us to start rebuilding healthy churches, healthy homes. You know, we like to say, as the father goes, so goes the household. As the household goes, so goes society. So it starts with getting men to be strong, growing into godly fathers, starting those homes. And a church is about as healthy as its households, you know. And then as you have healthy churches, it bleeds out into all of society as you know, salt and light. Yeah. And so that's what we need. Like, we need, like with the fight against abortion, we need men to step up
Yeah.
Women aren't as scary as men women will wear some of these guys out, and I'm thankful for them. We need mothers in Israel. But men showing up and just at different council meetings, at the State House, all that stuff.
Yes.
Makes that impact.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that. You pointed out the solution, I think, in all of this, though, is really, if we think about churches needing to be restored, society needing to be restored, and then what is a church? Well, its primary building block is a collection of households.
Yeah.
And households are headed by fathers.
Yep.
So in order to restore healthy households with healthy churches, you have to restore healthy fathers, which means you have to have a healthy vision of manhood and masculinity restored. But this is precisely what's been under attack, as you're pointing out. Yep. So you say in the book, I want to bring two thoughts together here. Patriarchy is unavoidable. Now, I want to ask you briefly, how so? And then two, it seems like what you're saying, and this is something that you've said elsewhere, it's not so much a war between the sexes, like men and women at each other's throats, vying for these power grabs. We need to understand the origin of this. You're talking about reading all these feminists. Like, it's a war on sex itself, ontologically speaking. Can you bring those two together? Sure.
So the idea that patriarchy is inevitable, which is the first line of the book, came from Stephen Goldberg's book that got, it was originally titled Patriarchy is Inevitable, and it was retitled Why Men Rule. He's
Father Rule. Patriarchy is Father Rule.
So Stephen Goldberg's anthropologist. The book, crazily, is endorsed by Margaret Mead, who's a feminist and really the mother of anthropology.
Well, all right.
Yeah. So, and it's because Goldberg shows that their patriarchy is all we have in history. There's never been a matriarchy. There's matrilineal cultures where you track certain aspects of inheritance rights or whatever through the women. But in terms of the top leadership positions, it's always men. Still is, even in America. Presidents, chairman of the board, heads of corporations, like it's like 95% or something. It's like really high, and I think it's hilarious that Trump is responsible for stopping the first woman president twice. That's a little side note, but that's ironic. Anyway,
but a worthy one to point out.
Yeah. So the reason it's inevitable, it's part of nature. And you can't stop God's design. It's
built into this place.
Yeah. So it's like, how long does if everyone was gay, let's say we're all gay and there's no technology, it's a one generation society, right? It all falls apart because you don't have any children. So you can't go against nature too long. You can only mess with, part of the problem with hormonal birth control. It screws with people, right? When you try to control nature, there's consequences. Yep. So patriarchy is inevitable. It's going to happen one way or another. The question is, will it be good or bad patriarchy? God is a father. God is the father. That's not a metaphor we put on God. God is the father from which all fatherhood gets its name.
This is how he reveals himself.
That's right. Yep. And so the devil, though, is a father of sorts. He's a father of lies. And that's how Jesus speaks of him. You are sons of the devil, right? So the idea of being a son of God is meaning that you reflect his nature. Being a son of the devil, you reflect his nature. So that's spiritual patriarchy. But you also have bad patriarchs like Pharaoh versus a good patriarch like Moses, right?
Yes.
So Pharaoh wants to control the young men for his own glory, his own good, as opposed to, like, say, a pastor or father. Like, my goal as a father is to raise my sons and my daughters into peers. I want to be amazed one day by how wise my son has grown to be and how good of a dad he is. So you're raising them up. That's what a father does.
And Pharaoh's attacking
the young man, pacify them,
infanticide,
killing them. Yeah, that's always and there's always a connection. So, like, even in America, from a legal standpoint, it's not patriarchal, but from who controls things, it is at the top. And those guys like to use women against men because women at the middle level tend to be a little more compliant than guys. That's probably because we've got testosterone. We're just much more competitive. Jordan Peterson's explained why guys get paid more. Part of it is that they just ask and they're more aggressive. But, you got the devil using Eve against Adam. You've got the Philistines using Delilah against Samson. Okay. You've got Pharaoh using the Hebrew midwives against trying to at least.
Right.
So that's an example of women being moral and godly, right? The point is that the devil likes to turn the sexes against each other, right? He's always doing that. They're playing them against each other because that leads to chaos. The devil is ultimately an agent of chaos where God is a God of order. So like Joker from The Dark Knight's Agent of Chaos.
Yes.
He's like the shark from Jaws.
The preeminent anarchist.
Just pops in, pops out, right, whatever.
Causes chaos and then leaves.
And that's what you kind of see with the devil. He pops in here, he tempts Jesus for a while, leaves until he has an important, good time to do it again. So, but he likes to turn the sexes on each other because if we're united, we start to produce stable households and children and culture and churches and yada, yada, yada. So if you can break that all down, you can get the sexes to fight with each other. Yep. And the sexes complement and complete each other in the sense of mission, right? So God gives us this mission. We'll refer to that sometimes as like the creation,
the dominion mandate,
dominion, cultural mandate, whatever. They're all the same thing. It's creation that is part of the perfect world. So it's something that's not cultural in the sense that it is over and is going to be part of this creation until God creates a new creation, right? It's cultural in that it produces culture. We make stuff. It's dominion that we control things. At the heart of that, though, is be fruitful and multiply. And at the heart of that is it's not good for a man to be alone. And I'll bring him a helpmate, and they're joined together in one flesh. That's marriage. So marriages produce children. Children in marriages produce culture. And a household, biblically, is not just there's a difference between a house and a home, right? So when you stay at an Airbnb, you're staying at a house. Right. And it's always like a little generic. I'm at an Airbnb, but at your home, it's lived in. It's you. It's pictures of your family. It's your style and all that stuff. It's a culture. It's an atmosphere. It's a feeling. So households is the everything of your family. It's the byproduct of covenantal love together. It's the children. It's the property. It's the influence. It's your reputation, your name. Yeah. It's all of that. So God, the creation mandate is realized through the joining of a man and woman to produce households.
So that's why Satan hates sex.
He hates sex.
It's not that he loves it, as many people wrongly suppose. Like, Satan loves sex.
He likes sex outside of marriage because the same reason arsonist loves fire outside of fireplaces, right? right. So fire...
You can weaponize it.
Yeah. Yes, good things twisted are super destructive.
Yes.
Right. One of the most destructive things in the world is a bad dad or a bad pastor, right? Because they're very powerful. Tons of influence, tons of power. And that can be very destructive, right? It's one of the most beautiful things is a godly, present father, a godly, disciplined shepherd, all those things. So the devil wants to take fire out of the fireplace, out of the engine chamber, and bring it out into the world and burn it down. So guys that you see this with like Augustine and Chrysostom and some of these early church fathers who just had a really low view of sex. With Augustine, I think it's certainly connected to him taking a concubine and all that prior to his conversion and the guilt. So those that have been singed by the fire of lust are scared of fire. And so I think when you look at some of the early church, a lot of their views of sex is a little messed up, but it was a very hedonistic time.
Yeah, they were reacting to that probably.
And we have the problem again because pornography is everywhere.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, you wanted to get porn, you got like in between your dad's mattress, your uncle's mattress, or a VHS step. Now you just your phone, right? Like it's easy to get there on accident.
You can't not carry the fire close to your chest, lest you be burned.
And that's what
it's very easy to carry the fire next to your 100%. Chest.
And we are dealing with 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds that grew up seeing this stuff. We have a lot of people for the first time that they're sexually intimate. There's choking happening because they think that's normal, right?
That's just what they've seen.
That's what they've seen. It's like that's not normal. That's not good. They think BDSM is normal. That's not good either. That's a product of growing up so we are in an age that's not unlike before the church really took hold in the West, or it was renewed through the Reformation. We're in a very You got stuff like MGTOW, men going their own way. We're not going to get married. It's bad. You got women. I mean, women, this is hard for older pastors to realize. Like the women today are very scandalous in their online behavior. Not all of them, but we're so used to say guys today are losers, right? Like it's okay to speak in generalities about guys, but not about women. I think porn has ruined men. Mm-hmm. I think social media has ruined women. Because you can have someone that's like grossly obese and not healthy, and she'll post pictures on Instagram and have a ton of guys tell her that she's beautiful. Now, I'm sure she's beautiful in some ways and all that, but health is a beautiful thing. We should pursue it. We all have our own struggles, whatever. But now, like, women are being flattered and told that they're great no matter what with the body positivity movement. What matters there is that flattery inflates people, right? Big
sense of self-worth and so on.
And just like, also, guys, you're supposed to work to get sex, right?
Yeah, this is a glory that's won.
Yes. And so now we have social media and pornography. Social media is bad for a certain type of guy. We see guys online with, always warring and can't get along with anybody, especially
contentious,
reformed guys,
just a few.
Yeah. Well, I've gotten in trouble for speaking of them as autistic. But they say autism is the male brain on steroids, is what I've read. And I think they're guys that lack social cues. They're socially obtuse. And that's because that stuff is learned in the context of the family. So so
they're showing their hand a bit about where they come from.
They're broken. And they're very mechanistic and mechanical, and even red pill, blue pill, white pill, black pill. Everything's super categorized. Yeah. And it's like you're coding, or like you can engineer like sexuality. Sexuality is much more organic in the way it works. Even what's male and female, or masculine and feminine, there is like a zone that is shared by the sex. Androgyny, though, is where you make the sexes interchangeable,
right?
Or you so mix them that there's no distinctions,
which we're seeing everywhere,
100%
right now.
Yes.
And it's taken, of course, it's more subtle forms.
Yep.
And then it's more overt forms as well, where it's just,
100%.
This is what we're after.
Yes.
We want to completely flatten
We'll say that. Yep.
Altogether.
And David Bowie's like one of the famous guys that kind of push forward androgyny. Another one is the woman Tilda Swinton, who plays, she kind of looks like David Bowie, actually. But she plays the White Witch. But she is in the Constantine movie, I think.
Oh, Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, I think she is. And she plays like Gabriel or Michael, the angel. And she's very like, what? Yeah, she kind of looks like a dude, kind of doesn't. You know, it's
you can't tell. You're unsure.
Yeah, and
it's
so
unsettling because you can't tell.
And that's like, well, I'll say simple things that'll like drive people nuts. Like, men make bad moms. Moms make bad dads. Like, whoa, so you're saying it's bad to be a single parent? Well, first off, yes, every single parent feels that way. Every mom that's a single mom wishes that she had a godly father in the lives of her children. Every single dad wished he had a godly mother in the life. Like, so it's bad in that it's difficult and it's not what's supposed to happen. And does that mean single parents don't give it their all? Of course they do. But women can't make up for the lack of a father. A father can't make up for a lack of a mother. Right. This is part of God's design.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that God can't work in spite of that. Certainly, that's part of what we know about regeneration. Born again, we have new desires. We can leave those things in the past. Such were some of you.
But there's a normative expression and a telos for which men and women were created.
And it's the natural family and the spiritual family. And the best chapter to make this super clear that they're distinct but overlapping is 1 Timothy chapter 5, where a guy that doesn't provide for his own family is worse than an unbeliever. The context of that is a husband and wife providing for their in-laws. So it has in view the extended family. And the reason that's coming up is the church that Timothy was in, probably Ephesus, was having issues with widows who weren't really widows. In other words, they could still get married, or they had family that could take care of them. And the church is like, look, we're totally willing to take care of these people, but here's what these women need to be. And if they're not that, we're not going to take care of them. They should just get married or their kids. So what you're seeing, the church has responsibilities to these women, but also the family, the natural family, has responsibilities to them first. So they're overlapping, they're interacting, but they're not the same. Mm-hmm. So a pastor is father-like, a father is pastoral, but they're distinct. Right. Like, so
they have a realm of authority, they have a sphere of authority,
and they interact, but they're not identical. And right now it's like, I was on Cultist the other day, and I really think we're entering a new age of cults. And I think the lack of fathers set people up for cults. And they'll take different forms, whether it's like CrossFit or these online groups. Yeah. I'm not saying all CrossFits are a cult, but it can be. And CrossFit, like a certain little group, can have control in a way that's not good. Same way online, some of these churches very much act like cults in this sort of control. And that's because people are drawn to that because they want a shared identity. They want a dad. They want approval. They want to belong. They want a
sense
tradition.
Of fraternity.
Yep.
Right.
All
you
that
have
stuff.
a team around you.
Yep,
you have
100%.
brothers, all that.
So part of like our challenge in an age of androgyny, in an age of broken families, is recovering fatherhood as it extends across all these different realms of authority, spheres of authority, and also creating the proper limitations. Like, I'm not ashamed of my fatherly authority or my pastoral authority. I will use it and not apologize, but it has limitations, right? And good dads knowing, like when your kids are little, you tell them what to do and they do it, right? It's Ephesians, obey your mom and dad, right? Do that. As they get older, I always tell people it's like sledding, where it's like when you're going down a hill, you don't have a steering wheel on most sleds. You kind of like lean.
Yeah.
And
hope
as
you
you lean like,
depending on the hill.
So with your sons and daughters, as they move through, especially their later teens, you're raising them into adults. And part of that is maintaining proper boundaries, like there's a difference. Like, for example, is like, I got a little girl, if she runs through the house naked when she's like 2 years old, she's a 2-year-old, whatever. It's like not a big deal. But as she moves like up that, it's, darling, this is not modest. It's not proper. As you're raising kids, you're establishing lots of boundaries like that. Yeah. People that grew up without proper boundaries are very vulnerable to manipulation. Right. And so this is a problem, like, how do we recover authority? One way to think about authority is to think about energy. Like, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes states. So God is the only absolute authority there is. There is no other absolute authority, only God. All authority is given by God for a purpose. It's delegated authority. God delegates authority to really three main institutions, right? The family, the state, church. I would argue that the state's pre-fall too. Some people would disagree, but it doesn't really matter. It's all delegated authority, and that authority is delegated for a particular purpose. Right. If one of those institutions fails to exercise authority in an area, another institution can gobble it up. So, for example, let's say a dad abdicates a family, and he's not there. I don't know. He just ditches them or something. Yeah. And he's got a son that is getting into trouble and steals a dirt bike or whatever. And now the state's got to get involved. State's, and then they can take some authority that rightly belongs to the household, but now the state becomes a nanny state. So one reason tyrants hate patriarchy, especially when it's distributed patriarchy through heads of households, men stepping up, is it's a check on their authority. Right. So, or if the church doesn't exercise authority, they don't like excommunicate that boy or put him through some type of church discipline, then the family maybe steps in or whatever. But that authority is going to go somewhere. Yeah. The problem that we've really had in America for quite some time is the authority's almost all gone to the state. So one reason like guys like me get excited about Trump coming into power is like DOGE, the Department of Governmental Efficiency. Yeah. Well, I like that. I like removing their hands from our life where they're exercising authority that's not God-given is a good thing. Yeah. Now, we have to take that back. Right. And so we have this very difficult task that's fallen to this generation, which is restoring fatherhood, restoring institutions, restoring boundaries. It's going to be messy. It's going to be hard, just like anytime you're learning how to do something. So that's it. That's, abortion disappears if all the men just rise up.
Amen. And that's been our feeling too about this. I mean, we've been involved in this for years now, fighting on multiple fronts.
Tons.
Outside the clinics, the legislative aspect of it, but equally as important to those things is undermining the culture that nourishes 100%. Abortion.
That's right.
So there's a fatherly, there's a paternal abdication involved in all of these various areas, in the home, in the church, and I'd even argue in the state too. It's men failing to do and say what needs to be done and said in order to end abortion. And I don't just mean end it legally, which we want. We want baby murder outlawed. We want all life protected under the law. Yes. That's what we're aiming at here.
100%.
But we need to also, you mentioned men ruling over themselves, ruling their homes, pastors ruling over their churches, preaching against this, which many times is just not done. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of trepidation going on there too. I wanted to maybe just throw something out at you here. You keep hammering away on the androgynous aspect here. And in the book, you talk about Romans 1, how really these physical manifestations of throwing off our gender roles, our sex roles, are really just a spiritual manifestation of us rejecting the creator-creature distinction.
Yes.
Right? So Romans 1, we all know it. We don't want God in our knowledge. We exchange the truth for the lie. Yes. We worship the creature rather than the creator. And then that has physical manifestations. That spiritual rebellion actually looks like something in the world, and it looks like throwing off that telos for which we were created. And I can't think of anything that does that maybe in a more fundamental manner than taking something that is within the woman, that is meant to create life, nurture life, grow life, and ultimately care for life, once birth has taken place. But I can't think of anything more fundamentally destructive towards that telos, and something that is more androgynous, right? Because you're taking those distinctions that are good and godly and that God built into the fabric of the cosmos, and you're saying, no, we will not be fruitful. We will not do what women were created to do.
That's right.
We want to be like men in this way. And so as I'm reading the book here, again, last night I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a totally pagan mindset.
It is.
This is ritualized, sacramental androgyny. You read things like I read yesterday, J.K. Rowling made a statement on Twitter. And
she's gotten cool, man.
She's an incredible advocate really for, we don't want men in women's spaces and women's sports and so on and so forth. And then she's like, but I'm fighting for the right for a woman to have an abortion.
She's kind of an old school feminist.
Right.
But,
so I'm thinking to myself, like, well, hang on a second. If we're going to be consistent here, then we have to understand that sex, we need to have a high view of it, not only in the locker room, but in the bedroom.
That's right.
It's dangerous. Right? It will create people that will live forever. It's part of the dominion mandate. It creates worshipers of God. So that makes it part and parcel to the plan of God for salvation. It's what he's doing in the world and among the nations. And abortion is such a fundamental attack on the family, on marriage, on life, on children. That, I mean, this is spiritual. Would you agree that this is fundamentally a religious conflict? Abortion can't be fought like, oh no, let me just give you some biological proofs here that this is a human. It's got to be much deeper and say, no, this is a moral, spiritual problem of fallen hearts.
I think what abortion does, it ties together several very massive forms of rebellion. Number one, it is the violent elimination of the image of God from the world, right? So after the flood, we still see that man bears the image of God, because you can't shed a man's blood without your blood being shed, because he bears the image of God. So in abortion, you are destroying a human life that is an image bearer. And part of what's so glorious about humans is we're made in the image of God.
Amen.
Secondly, it's a rebellion against your body, right? You're saying your body's not your reality and you have no commitment to what's inside of you. Third, it is a rebellion against the proper design of the family, of motherhood, of fatherhood. So in it, you have the violent elimination of the image of God. You have the rebellion against your body is destiny, body is reality. And then also the tossing off of God's order in the world, right? I was thinking about something you just said. You can appeal. This is like even with non-Christians. I remember I was at Greenville Women's Clinic down in Greenville. It's an abortion clinic. And, so we used to go down there with your guys' signs when I was a pastor in South Carolina. Remember this black fella comes in, drops someone off, goes out. And on the way out, he stops to talk to me. And finally, rarely could you get them to stop. He's like, oh, I'm just dropping her off for prenatal. I was like, no, you're not. No, you're not. I said, look, you should go back in there right now. He's, oh, I don't know, man. I said, have you seen the movie Taken? And he said, yes. I said, so it's Liam Neeson, daughter, kidnapped. I'm going to come.
A set of skills.
I got skills. I'm going to find and kill you. He's like, right. So Liam Neeson's the hero. You agree? And the gentleman says, sure. I said, I want you to understand, like, you are a father to a kid.
Yeah.
And you're not going to go in there and save her. You are not the hero. You are the bad guy. Every time you watch Taken or any other movie where a father steps up and do it. So I was just taking away.
I remember this moment.
And I said, he cheered up.
Yeah.
And he came back. I don't know if they got out or not. Who knows what happened? I'm not sure. But this stuff is so built into us. You can't hide from it. Like, nature is inevitable. And God will redeem nature. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Like, but it's part of who we are. It works itself out. Like, I think we might look back on like 2012 to about now and be like, those were the retarded times. Like, those, I don't know if we're allowed to say that on Apologia Studios.
Well, we are now.
Yeah, but it's a new day. New day is dawning. Right. But it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like it's been crazy. It went like when I went to university, I graduated from NKU back in the early 2000s, Northern Kentucky University. They say it's the Harvard of Northern Kentucky.
The Harvard of Northern Kentucky.
Not really. Yeah.
All right.
But it was still about veritas, about truth and question authority, right? And then just a few years later, it's like, words are violence, don't make us question anything, right? Things got really crazy. And now I kind of see this current administration as the beginning of a sort of conservative paganism. Is what I suspect will happen.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. I know a lot of people didn't vote for Trump because of how soft the Republican Party it's been changed forever.
Yes.
Right. And it's not going to, like, they basically gutted it of its pro life, is never abolitionist to begin with, but even from pro-life. But one reason they've come back into power is everyone pushed it too far. And everyone's like, this is insanity. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's because nature's like that. Like, you can only rebel for so long until there's like consequences.
Yeah.
You can't
it's
go
self-destructive. Like, stupidity doesn't work.
Well, you kill a baby inside of you, it messes a woman up forever. It could physically mess her up, certainly messes her up psychologically.
Yeah.
A man who goes along with the destruction of his own child, he's never the same again. You can't rebel against nature without there being consequences.
Yeah, the creation strikes back.
What has happened with transgender surgeries? Like, it is vile and gut-wrenching to read what it does to people, and just
irrevocable damage.
Can't even talk and like, well, it's one, they'll say, if I follow my feelings, I will be happy. And then they're more suicidal after the post-op than they are pre-op.
What a putrid philosophy.
Yeah. Disgusting. Yeah. This all gets back to this issue of now, so sin is not just wrong, it's bad. It's wrong in that it goes against God's truth. It's bad in that it goes against God's design. And with that, sin is its own punishment to some degree.
It's its own, it carries with it a particular curse.
Yeah, a power.
Also, yes.
A power in the real world. And righteousness is not just true, it's good. So one example of this would be the fifth commandment, honor your father and mother. It's the first commandment with promise that your life may be long. Right. So we know that righteousness prolongs a person's life. That could be quantitatively or qualitatively.
Right.
Quantitatively, like years. Perhaps one of the reasons we see that the Sethite line live such long lives is because they are following God, and part of it's a way to demonstrate a blessing on them, right?
Yeah.
Certainly true of the patriarchs. They live to be, even Jacob, to be 145 years old. But it certainly is quantitative or qualitatively, it's a better, fuller life. When you follow God's design, blessings come with it. You're still in a fallen world. It's not perfect, but
obedience does
yes,
bring blessing normatively.
Think of it this way: like women, one of the things that a father or a good husband gives a good wife is that I help make big decisions for my family, so my wife can focus on decisions, because she is with kids all day long while I'm working, and she's got 1,000 decisions she's making.
Right.
There's a sort of decision fatigue.
Yeah. No
So when male headship is done in a godly way, I come in and alleviate my wife from having to be the decisive one all the time. Right? There's nothing more frustrating in a woman than a man who is passive and won't take action. She may not be able to put that into words, but you can see it in their lives. Mm-hmm. A lot of anxious women are just because they're with men that just won't decide or do something.
Yeah.
Make
a decision.
It could also be they don't follow the man.
Yeah,
right? It could be that they have their own problems. I'm not saying it's always the guy, but I am saying that when a man accepts headship into his life, like, I might not be to blame for everything in my household, but I am responsible.
Right.
There's different things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm responsible for all my kids, for my wife. They're their own moral agents. They make their own decisions. So I might not be to blame for the particular actions they took, but I am responsible. Once I accept responsibility, and God has created authority and responsibility in such a way that they tend to travel in parity. Like, so if you get more authority, you get more responsibility. Mm-hmm. If you give someone more responsibility, you should give them more authority, right? And those things should travel together.
It flows.
And that's why anytime like you step up in leadership, it's not just for benefits. The benefit is the work.
Yeah.
The benefit's not just the perks. You do get some perks, whatever, but I don't know, as someone who's moved up in leadership in a lot of different areas, like, sometimes like, maybe it would have been better to be a foot soldier, than to be the captain. But the point I'm making here, though, is that as you obey God, good things come from it. As you submit to your sexual reality, I am a man, I am a woman. As you work through it according to not just design and nature, which shows us a lot, but also the special revelation of Scripture.
Yep.
As you work that out in your life, you have more peace, more shalom in your marriage, in your home, and that trickles out into all of society.
Yeah.
And so one way we bring peace, this is like, we should get involved in politics. We should be involved in that process, but that works alongside with the preaching of the gospel,
right? With
the establishment of homes. If we want peace, because a lot of times power can bring quiet, but it can't bring peace. So, in the example I would always give is I've been around quiet dinner tables with my wife.
Yeah.
Without any peace.
There's some uneasiness.
There's
a lot going on under
conflict
the surface.
Underneath the surface.
Right.
But so we have to pursue those things, but getting men to take responsibility for themselves to the extent that they can be responsible for more people. So creating a surplus of responsibility, creating a surplus of not just resources, but of leadership. Now I can take on, because that's how it starts. First, you get a woman, somehow you convince her, like,
take a shot on me.
Let's do this,
Yeah.
Then you get kids, and you take that, and then you work your way up in the business world. You work your way up in the church.
Yeah.
As a guy is taking, responsibility for himself, he magnifies it out, and it's almost like we create a gravitational zone where everyone's like pulled into us, because everyone's looking.
Concept of gravitas.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it was crazy. Like, we're thinking about how to describe what a man should become. And a man has a weight to him, right?
He pulls people into his orbit.
He does. And a lot of guys that desire leadership just lack gravitas. And how do you get gravitas? Well, you throw yourself into life, right? It's
that's the hard part.
You plod.
Right?
You plod.
Yeah.
You don't become, how'd you get so wise? I've stepped on a lot of nails, a lot of landmines. I mean, a lot of mistakes. I've lived a lot of lives. I've watched a lot of other people do things. Wisdom. Sometimes you get wisdom just from the gift of the Spirit through studying the Word, but a lot of times it's through living life. And there's a reason.
Pain and suffering.
Young men can be stupid. And right now online, you can't tell them, hey, you're being a young, oh, you're a boomer. First off, I'm Gen X. Right. Like if we care.
Got me confused with the wrong one.
Yeah. So I'm not a boomer. I got the same struggles with, there's like real generational. I got the same struggles as you, but this isn't generational. You're just a loser. You're just a loser that can't take correction. And
a scoffer, if you will.
Yes. And what men need is a willingness to take correction. And you read Proverbs, and my son, give me your heart.
Yeah.
Says that like 14 times in like first 16 chapters. You can tell
what he's focused on.
Yeah. Son, be this man. Do not reject my teaching. Do not receive correction. Don't be the fool.
Yeah.
And I have not regretted having lots of mentors and pastors in my life that have been willing to tell me no. I just think about that with a lot of guys. Like, man, someone should have told you no a long time ago.
Yeah.
And that's the loving, benevolent discipline of a dad. No, you may not. I'm not into gentle parenting. I think gentle parenting creates monsters.
Gentle parenting creates hardened hearts.
That's right. You can have soft hearts and thick skin, which is what we should have, especially with our boys. But that comes from a dad saying, "So you may not do that. You may not talk to your mom that way."
Yeah,
in our house,
free to behave this way.
No, we're Christians, and so learning to take no and tell yourself no is a big part of developing gravitas. No, that is wrong. I won't do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes God is gracious to send Jiminy the Cricket to us.
Yeah.
In the form of a good brother,
right.
In form of a good pastor or whatever. So what I see online a lot of times, I see a lot of unfathered men. And the way they're like, just the little pushback sometimes, every once in a while pushback, they'll get really cranky, like real quick, like, come on. And I think you weren't bullied enough in high school, and you didn't have a dad, where that corrected you, because you're brittle the way these guys are brittle a lot of times because they haven't been put on the anvil and just hitting.
I know that
over.
metaphor well. My father was a farrier growing up, so I watched him hammer countless horseshoes on the anvil and watched him shape them in the forge and all that.
Whatever anger we have towards our father, just know that your son will struggle with some of that towards you, and perhaps extend some grace for the sake, if not for his sake, for your sake and the sake of your own son in the future, and a willingness to say, like the whole boomer stuff blows up all the time and it's overplayed. And I've been asked to write an article for a certain news magazine on it. I don't know if I'm going to do it or not. Okay. But
we'll have to see then.
We'll see. See how I feel about it. But there are real generational things. But man, my dad made mistakes. But as I look at my sons and I see everything that's wonderful about me and my wife, and a lot of the things are just terrible. And I was saying this to Jeremiah Roberts the other day, that we spanked our two sons too much because we were like new to parenting. I grew up in a broken home, and we were like in a movement at the time that was like, spank him. It was like, spank the crap out of that kid,
Yeah.
And then I don't spank the other 6 kids quite like we did them. And one of my sons said, "Dad, you just don't spank them enough." I said, son, we spank them the right amount now. And I'm sorry. We were too harsh on you guys. And we made a mistake, and we were following the instruction of others, but it was our decision. We did it.
Yeah.
And I need you to forgive me.
Taking responsibility for it.
And so we're going to sin against our kids. If you've been sinned against, all right, welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah. You're not unique.
What are you going to do? You're going to have to, at some point, at least extend forgiveness. Have it out there so your heart doesn't get bitter and you can stop being a bastard, right? In the sense of you need to be your own man.
I want to head towards wrapping this up. There's one thing I want to ask you about too, because I'm just pulling concepts here from your book. You use the term white knight. These are
people love that.
The kind of men that go to bat for women regardless of how awful they're acting or being.
Yeah.
Right. They're just, it's within them to crave that validation, that approval that they didn't get elsewhere, and then find it in the praise of women who are just acting all out of sorts.
Yeah.
But I want to tie that concept here to going back to what we see in the church sometimes, and pastors in particular being afraid to address sins like abortion, right? Sins that are particular to the female nature. Of course, there's other parties involved and men abdicating and so on. But I think there's a real, because we want women to know the truth. They can be forgiven, right? They can know Christ.
Yeah.
They can have his blood cover them. Yeah. They can experience what it means to be reconciled to God. They can have peace with God, and his blood can cover the sin of murdering their own children.
That's right.
That's the freedom that we offer in Christ. But when we say, nah, don't worry, sweetheart, you just didn't know what you were doing, or you know, you had a lot of external voices chirping in you, and so we don't want to push the envelope because, number one, we don't want to offend anyone. We don't want the backlash coming from over here. That's the church side of it. Yeah. But I see it too, and we do a lot in the broader pro-life world.
Sure you do.
All of these pro-life organizations, maybe not every single one, are all run and headed by women.
Yep.
Because there is a tendency to believe, and we're just kind of giving the pro-choice side this objection on a silver platter. Yeah. You know, they say, you don't have a vagina, so you can't talk about abortion.
Yeah,
right?
Watch me.
We're giving that to them by saying, you know what? I think it would be better for a female to bring this bill to the legislature. Yeah. I think it would be better for a woman to speak to this issue. Yeah. We don't realize, I think, that in deferring, we are abdicating our authority and, quite frankly, what our culture needs, which is strong, godly, masculine leadership to actually end abortion. It's got to come from us because we have to be willing to say the hard truth, and we have to be willing to call out sin in our own camps. Yep. You know, lust in our churches, fornication, all of these things that are taking our people, that are ensnaring them. But also, we have to be willing to, like, we've had pro-life organizations say, you know what? Gosh, I wish you guys lead this. Yeah. They're women. They're saying, please just lead this because we don't know what to do. Yeah. I mean, we need that.
They want male headship. Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. And it's good to be a man. There was one line that we had in there. I forget exactly how we said it, but it's like the devil has daughters as well, or something like that. So Canon wanted us to take it out, not because it just didn't flow. They thought, I was like, no, I want that one in there. I don't know where else to put it. Yeah. But that's where it fits the best. I'm not moving on that one. So, so we left it in there. And it was in a chapter where we just wanted to talk about how there is such thing as evil women. Like, there's evil men, there's evil women. There's the Lady Folly. There's all that.
She's loud.
She's loud. She doesn't
not just with her words.
Doesn't just stay at home. She's a brash. Yeah, a brash woman. She's tumultuous like a storm or whatever. The problem with the White Knights is they just think of women. You know, we call it masculine devils and angelic. Or feminine angels, masculine. So angels used to always be seen as men until really the Romantic period. And you have this kind of radical change post-Romantic into America where women now are seen as like closer to God, cleaner. That's part of the problem with the temperance movement too.
They're kind of the redemptive force for wild men.
Yeah, and you see this.
They tame them. And
one thing that I think that goes on with a lot of boomers that I've noticed is when you read some of these books by guys that wrote on boomer, like they're kind of boomer guys, they were like rough dudes, and then they met some woman, that helped them clean up, and she really did. Yeah, she was God's grace to them. Yeah, but they don't see like God working through her. It's almost like the feminine is working through her to make him the man he ought to be, or whatever. And I'm like,
as an instrument.
And I was like, so let's not deny this wife is clearly a beautiful, or some of these guys got a relatively godly woman to sleep with them, and they have this deep guilt about it. And then they end up marrying this. So if you read enough of these books, and I do, you're like, well, there's quite a theme developing here. And I think back then women were, back 60s, 50s, they were a little more, they cared, like they didn't have abortion, like they didn't have birth control. Yeah. So the consequences of sex is they get pregnant, everyone knows. Yeah. Right. So they were much more disciplined at some level in those areas as a culture. And then as that's got lifted, it's had consequences on women. And these White Knights, they just treat women like they don't do anything bad. Anyone that they race to defend them. My lady, I'm sorry this guy's doing that to you.
Yeah, they're the damsel in distress.
Yeah, there's a lot of nasty dudes out there that just hate women. That's a real thing. Misogyny is a real thing. Yeah. But also Misandry is a real thing, hating men.
Hatred of men.
And androgyny is acting like that, both like collapsing the sexism together and not willing to hold women accountable. Women have agency, they make decisions. And so you murdered your baby, right? Like, it's very unlikely that anyone put a gun to your head and forced you to go in there and hold you down on the table or forced you to take that pill. I'm sure it's
statistically speaking.
Yeah. No, you did this. It's your fault.
Yeah.
You have to accept it. You're not merely a victim. You can be both a victim and victimizer.
Sure.
Both those things can exist.
Brainwashing, the culture, media, etc.
But the reason pastors won't do it, and a lot of people won't do it, is that when you scream at a man, he either works harder or screams back, right? And so that's why guys scream at dudes. Like, every guy's had a coach. That's the coach just like
in your face,
like, more. And you're like, I will do more. I will be tougher. I'm not gay. I'm all, you know. But you scream at a woman, it does not go well, right? And I think these guys, they don't want to rebuke these women because they don't want to put in the work. And I get it. It's like you're about to preach a sermon that's like, it's fire.
It's going to land
in
some sensitive areas.
And now I'm going to get emails or I'm going to have to do more counseling.
Don't want to deal with it.
And you just have to be, no, I'm a shepherd. This is my responsibility. And I preached this sermon. I didn't even do this on purpose, but I preached a sermon called Christian Women Sin. And it fell on Mother's Day. Totally accidental.
Oh, that's providential.
Yeah.
I like it, right?
And so it was about the two women that are at odds in the church of Philippi. Okay. And I was just talking about how women have sins like gossip. That's constantly, men do that, but it's more prevalent in women.
Right.
Makes sense. A little more verbose, linguistically superior to men a lot of times or whatever. So it makes sense that slander, gossip, that sort of sin would be more prevalent in women, or at least warned about more. That's also because guys don't gossip, we fight. Right? Like, we got a problem, just go beat each other up.
Yeah.
Women are going to deal with something more indirectly. And that's why, like, guys that deal with things through gossip, slander, are effeminate. They're dealing with it indirectly in a non-masculine way.
Because they don't want to do the confrontation.
They don't want to do the confrontation. There's a way to do confrontation in a godly way. So these white knight pastors, like, they have two things going on. One is that they think women are angels. At least they act like it. And all the guys are just beating up on them, you know. And like, there are women that lead men away. Mm-hmm. Like, there are women that seduce men, right? They're like, there always has been. Everyone knows that. They do that. Mm-hmm. And think about all the false rape accusations that we have. And you can't reveal the identity of the accuser, but you can reveal the identity of the accused. Either it's all or nothing. They both should not be revealed, or they both should be revealed. Mm-hmm. And so this guy can have his entire life destroyed, and they believe all women. It's like, that's part of the problem with the Harvey Weinstein thing, is it was a mixed bag. A lot of these people are lying about some of this stuff, and a lot of it happened. Hollywood's disgusting, right? It's got part of the sexually vile and all this stuff. But Me Too is full of a bunch of lies, because you can't challenge a woman. Yeah, you can. You should, if you love them. One of the greatest forms of love is to warn people about sin. And you were alluding to this earlier. Yep. If we're not going to correct women for their sin, we don't love them.
Yeah.
There's a way to do it. I'm not going to talk to my daughter the same way I talk to my sons, but I am going to talk to both of them about their sins. Yeah. And I'm going to do it in a wise way. And I'm not androgynous. I always point this out with guys. Like, guys don't like that women, like, women a lot of times when they communicate, I don't know if I can prove this. I can't prove this, but everyone watching knows I'm right. So guys generally are A to B, very content straightforward. Mm-hmm. I did this, I did that, I did that. Women, when they tell you a story, like, yeah, I was at the grocery store today and this and this. And as a man, I'm listening like, what's the command? What am I supposed to take out of this? Right. And it's like circling around, and then there's like these little tributaries of stories that go off to the side.
Come experience this journey with me.
Yeah, that's right.
Feel what I feel when I was here.
What she's doing is she's painting a picture. She's sharing her life with you. Her job is to knit people together. Yeah. Her job is to create culture. She's a helpmate. She's a nurturer. Yeah. So nurturers are going to like paint this picture, and you're like trying to figure it out. Yeah. Right.
What's the bottom line? Yeah. What do I do? What do I take away? You know?
Yeah. And guys will get mad that women talk that way. And I'm like, aren't you glad you're not married to a dude?
Yeah.
Right.
Amen.
Like, it's like, that's androgynous. Women are different. You just have to understand how they speak. You know, of course, there's some guys that are more like that. Some women are more like that. But we're speaking in generalities and concentrations. And it's like if a woman says, "Oh, it sure is cold in here," she might be asking for you to turn the heat on or give a blanket. Where a guy would just say, "Hey, will you turn the heat on or give me a blanket?" You know, This is how we do it.
A to B.
And like so we think about men and women. So women are contextual in their speaking a lot of times, where men are more content. Indirect contextual, men are direct content driven. Like, tell me what to do. That makes sense because we work together in a very mission oriented way.
That makes total sense. Yep.
So why I bring that up is that we can't go from being a white knight pastor to being a guy that beats on women talking to women as if they're not different than men.
Right.
And I love the example of like a wine goblet versus like a coffee cup, right? In my truck right now at the airport, CBG, where I'll be tonight, there are there are coffee mugs on the bottom. They're like chipped up and stuff, but they can like drive around. They're fine. If I did that with a wine goblet, it would get broken.
Yeah.
Right. Shatter. But they're both fine for what they are. Wine goblet is a weaker vessel, but it's perfect for drinking wine.
Yeah.
It's just not meant for that purpose.
It's suited to its purpose.
Yeah. Women are suited to their purpose. There's a weakness that women have that men don't have. But that weakness doesn't get in the way of being a woman. Right. It just gets in the way of being a man, which they're not made to be anyway. Right. And so I'm not going to talk to a woman the same way I talk to a man, not because I'm a white knight, but because I believe in sexuality. I believe in maleness and female. I'm not androgynous.
Yeah.
And so this is interesting that you've got almost like the horseshoe, right? Like I remember once we did a bunch of home births, and the first time we did home birth, we're at like a home birth class. It's me and Emily. She's pregnant with Hudson. And it's like me, Emily, a lesbian couple that's going to have like a baby. Okay. This black couple who was from this mega church, and they're big, like George Bush supporters.
Interesting.
It was weird. Okay. And I was like, isn't it wild, Em? It's like old Mario Brothers. If you go far enough on the right, you pop out the other side on the left. And it's like the horseshoe theory is what they call it. Okay. So it's interesting, androgynous feminists and androgynous masculineness can kind of happen. They're far, but they end up being the same thing in that they don't stress the good distinctions of the sexes, you know, and you have to be careful of that. So don't be a white knight, right? But don't be an androgynous brash man that treats women like men.
Yeah.
And that takes wisdom. You got to learn. You learn that in a household.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. I mean, we're talking balance here, which requires wisdom to apply these principles correctly here. You gave the story of, being at the abortion facility, and same thing. I've been there, pleading with countless men to go inside and rescue their woman. One actually did. I remember, he went inside. I was just like, go in there and get her out now. And he took that seriously. That's awesome. And he marched in there, dragged her out by the arm, threw her in his truck, and they left. And I'm praising God. 15 minutes later, same truck pulls back into the clinic. And she goes inside. He comes to the sidewalk. I'm talking with him. And I was like, bro, what happened? She's like, she's threatening to call the cops on me if I don't let her get the abortion. Wow. And that is, I mean, again, it requires so much balance. Yes. What you're talking about here. Like audience, contextually, how do we speak to men and women in all of these spheres, whether we're on the sidewalk, outside the abortion facility, the church, what the role of the civil magistrate is at the state, all of these work together. So landing the plane on this, because I know we've been going for a while. If the answer for doing things like ending cultural evils, such as abortion, is restoring godly households, and within that, restoring patriarchy, father rule, godly masculinity, how do we do that? What is the way to recover men? How do we get them back? Like, what is the means by which they are recovered? Yeah. And how do we go about taking part in that project, including us ourselves? Like, what role do we have to play in that as leaders, speakers, those with audiences, those with, people under our care, your pastor, and so on and so forth? How is this recovered? How are men made right? What's the answer? What's the hope to which we should be looking in this?
First and foremost, you must be born again, right?
So the gospel.
Yeah, repent, believe the gospel, right? Be part of the kingdom. The reason for that is easy, is first the approval of God the Father that we have through God the Son, applied to our heart through God the Spirit, is essential. Like the whole world, I might be a failure in every which way, but I'm saved. I'm washed in the blood, clothed in white robes, ready for eternity.
Right.
So God looks on me like he looks on his son at the baptism. This is my son in whom I'm well pleased. One reason it's good to say that benediction, like God make his face to shine upon you.
Yeah.
It's like smiling. God smiles on me. I'm not an
the light
object.
of his countenance.
Yeah. I'm not an object of wrath. I'm an object of joy, of delight for him. He is my father.
Which, by the way, is a key to, I think, understanding being a father, is
100%.
understanding that you're a beloved son.
Yes.
First.
Yep. I love my children. I want them, there's a good book, Faith of the Fatherless by Paul Vitz. And Vitz argues that a lot of hardcore atheists just had bad dads. Seems to be the case with Nietzsche and the Ubermensch. He had a weak Christian dad, and he was like looking for the idealized father, which is God. He is the father. Yeah. So number one, the gospel. Okay. Number two is start to take responsibility for yourself, right? Whatever happened to you, however you're victimized, however your dad failed you, right? Now, this is you moving forward, okay? Yeah. And so forgive your dad where you can forgive him. Like I said, always extend it. Sometimes they won't take it. That's not on you. It's your job to extend it. It's their job to take it. So then now you start taking responsibility for yourself in little things. First and foremost, be disciplined in your spiritual disciplines. Number one thing for a Christian man to do is go to church every Sunday. More important than reading the Bible every day is to go to church on Sunday, right? People didn't used to have Bibles. It's a new thing. It's like
they went to hear the word preached.
Yeah, that's why give attention to the reading of the word so you can memorize it. So first thing, create a rhythm of worship in your life. Okay. 6 days of labor, 1 day of worship. Right? Worship and rest. Go do that. So now you're going to church, you're building that discipline. Now, where can you take responsibility in your life? This is why, like Jordan Peterson saying, clean your bed, like
resonates.
Like these guys are like, this is the craziest thing.
It's pretty simple.
This is also why I think, like lifting weights is so empowering to a lot of these men, is that when your health is not good and you start to lift weights and you change your health and you're like, my effort actually affects my life. Like when guys see that, it gives them hope that they can take charge. They can actually take over things, So we'll start taking charge, clean your room, right? Create a budget, run, walk, lift, whatever, like take charge over your health, however you can. Yep. So start taking charge in little things first and then do them for a long time, like stack habits. And you build a habit, then stack another one. Like keep stacking them. Okay. It's like James Clear in Atomic Habits. We don't rise to our level of goals. We fall to our level of systems. Systems is another way of all men have habits. This is whether they're good or bad, right? Yeah. You're always building habits, so stop building bad ones. So you got the holy habit of going to church. Now you got the habit, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to read my Bible. You start taking responsibility from yourself, and soon you start having a surplus of time, of energy, of money. And as soon as you do that, then you start applying that to marriage, whatever. Now, let's say you are married. So I have a magical ability to gain and lose 45 pounds every other year or so. But a couple of years ago, I was like, I got to lose this weight, man. So I just started running. I would come home. I remember I ran through a tornado warning once. I decided no matter what, I was going to run. Yeah. So I come home from the church, put my clothes on, not say hi to anyone, go run 2 miles, come back. And then I was like, mad. I just eat like one meal a day. And so I lost a bunch of weight. And I didn't tell my wife I was going to do it, and I didn't invite her. I didn't say, you should run with me too. I didn't say any of that. I just did it. And she said, hey, I noticed you've been running a lot. It looks like you lost some weight. I was like, yeah, I'm trying to just be diligent here. She's like, do you mind if I run with you? I was like, I'd love it. You should come with me.
She saw and she wanted to join.
Yeah. So we started running together. Yeah. So I come home. She and I would run together every day for like a year and a half. So like we'd run to the good men's house. And I would always say, man, it's good to be a man. That's where the title of the book came from. I kid you not.
Well, that's a nugget right there that the audience needed to know.
I lived in Twin Lakes in Moore, South Carolina, and there's the Goodmans on, I forget the name of the street. So we'd stop there and talk like, what do you think? How do you think Hudson's doing? How do you think Cayman's doing? We'd talk a little bit. So it's like you start taking responsibility for yourself, and then people want to follow your lead. And what I tell guys in bad marriages is like, man, you just can't scream at her. You can't like start working on yourself, because that's where you have control the controllables. Yeah. You know, and pray for her. What if she won't follow? Well, what do you want to do? You want to like wrestle her to the ground and force her to follow? That's not how it works. At least you are growing. So that's that. Take responsibility where you can. Okay. Start somewhere. And that's kind of it, man. It's the bike chain metaphor, which I'm very I love. Yeah. So when a chain falls off a bike, that forward motion pops it on, and just you start taking responsibility for yourself. Like, this is outside of my control. I can't do anything about it. You know, there's things that we all want to control. That's the problem with this. A lot of these young men is they'll say, "Well, I don't think it should be that way." It is. Yeah. What are you going to do about it? Well, I'm going to talk about how it's broken. I'm like, well, I don't got time for that. Right. Like, I'll say here and there, but I can do this.
We're not building anything. Yeah.
Right? And so that's all we tell most guys. And then so we're doing Man on a Mission is our men's thing that we start in January. And so we have 6 sessions over 6 months on spiritual disciplines, physical, financial, relational, right, vocational, and then one's just overall on mission. But it's really focused on helping guys to start creating holy habits and holding each other accountable. So I think the other thing besides like taking those actions is trying to find other people doing it too. Yeah. Find men that aren't bitter that's doing something. And I tell you, I've gotten ahead in life because I have good friends and good mentors. And I stick close to my friends. When you're like gaining influence, you write a book and, people think you're something, people will say you should upgrade your friends. Not me, man. No, I'm sticking with those guys to the end. These are my brothers. They knew me before anyone else cared. And when everyone else stops caring, they'll still care. And they'll call me on my stuff. They'll say, no, you getting fat, or no, you're being lazy. And it'll come from love, or like, you can do this, I'm with you, or I'm really proud of you. Like having other brothers, that tease you a little bit, but do it out of love and stir you up. It's priceless. Yeah. And I think guys want that from their wife. I don't expect that from my wife. She gives it to me. Yeah. But women expect us to be strong for them. They kind of resent us when they're weak. Like I'm the weaker vessel. Right. I thought you were the one I could lean on. Like now, and they'll rub your sweetheart, it's gonna be all right. But guys actually, I think sometimes are way more sympathetic to masculine struggles. Like, been there, you can get this. So get saved. Yeah. Go to church, build habits, surround yourself with someone doing something. Where do I find them? Somewhere at the gym. Like, ask the guy if he hey man, you want to go see a boxing match with me, or you want to go hang out or whatever, build friendships. Well, what if it doesn't happen right away? It doesn't. This isn't first grade. Right. Like in first grade, you're all kind of trauma bond. You're ripped from your family. You're in this thing. And now will you be my friend? How many of us have really close friends? Like in some grade school, will you be my friend? And that's how it happened. Yeah. That's not how it happens in your late 20s, 30s, and 40s. Okay. Yeah. You start hanging out and you do that for a year, and then you start to become friends and start to trust each other. You just got to be steady and commit to it, or it'll never change. If you're looking for a silver bullet, they don't exist outside of the power of the gospel, getting you headed the right direction. Those are some of the things I'd say. Yeah.
I hope this has been helpful for everyone. Thanks so much for Pastor Foster for coming and doing this. I know it's been a blessing to me, brother.
Thank you.
So where can people go to get you? I know you're online. This is Foster tends to be the tagline or the
that's I'm on Twitter. Anything I'm up to, you find me there.
Okay.
So yeah,
all the socials, the podcasts, get the book. It's Good to Be a Man. Get copies for your church. Thank you, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and it's been a blessing.
Yeah, same.
All right.
God bless.